Hey, welcome to How to Play, brought to you by the Games Capital. Today we're looking at a very popular game, Carcassonne. Now Carcassonne is fast becoming one of the best-selling board games in the world. In fact, it's probably second only to Monopoly in terms of sales worldwide. Now we believe that every home should have a copy of Carcassonne. Now Carcassonne is a tile-laying game. It's for 2 to 5 players, and the beauty of this game is that it plays extremely well with just 2 players, but up to 5 can play. And the play time is relatively short, so it's going to take between half an hour and an hour to play a game of Carcassonne. Alright, so before we get into how to play, let's have a look at what's in the box. Now Carcassonne is a real medieval walled city in the south of France, and that's what the game is based upon. But as I mentioned, it's a tile laying game, so the game consists of all these little cardboard tiles that depict various parts of either the city and its surrounds. So you've got tiles that have parts of the walled city, some of them have these cloisters, some have roads, etc. There's all sorts of configurations of those tiles, which as the game progresses will come out into play. You also get a scoreboard where you keep track of the score during the game, and then there's a whole bunch of these little wooden men which are used as well. They're referred to in the game as followers, but they're more commonly known as meeples, and each player will get a set of those in a particular colour. Now, as well as that, you also get a little expansion with the game as well, which is called the river, and it depicts a river, obviously. Now, you can add that into the game as well. My suggestion is to put that aside for your first few games. Don't play with it until you're familiar with how the game works, then you can add it in. So that's what's in the box. Let's have a look at how you play. So to begin the game, each player will take one of their meeples and place it onto the scoreboard so they keep track of their score during the game. Then you need to find the start tile. Now the start tile has a different back to all of the other tiles, so you can find it. Locate that and place it out into the middle of the table. Then all the other tiles are put into 3 or 4 piles, doesn't really matter, as long as they're within easy reach of all the players during the game. Then on your turn, you're going to take the top tile from one of the piles and you will then add it to the existing tiles that are forming a map of the area of Carcassonne. Now there's restrictions obviously on how you can place that tile. So the roads need to match up with roads, or cities with cities, or fields with fields. So that will restrict you a little bit on where you can place those tiles. Now after you've placed a tile, you can also then take one of your meeples and place it onto that tile, onto a feature of that tile. Now there's 4 different ways that you can use those meeples, different places you can put them, and we'll examine those in a moment. But after you've placed your meeple, that's the end of your turn. However, if when you place the tile, you finish some feature of the map, so for example, if the city is completed, or if a road has a start and an end, then those features are going to get scored immediately. And we'll have a look at how scoring works in a moment. But that's basically how you play the game. Let's examine now those 4 areas where you can place one of your meeples. So if you elect to place one of your meeples into a city, he becomes a knight. Now, once you've placed a meeple into a city, you own that city. No one else can put their meeple into that city. Then it's in your interest, obviously, to make that city grow, because the bigger the city gets, the more points it's going to be worth. Now, the only way that somebody else can share the points for your city is if they create their own city that's nearby, and then eventually those 2 cities join up. Otherwise, the city is yours and yours alone, and it's in your interest to make that city as big as you can. Once it's complete, that's when you score the city, and you will earn 2 points for every tile within that city. Now there are some cities also, or city tiles, that have this little shield on them. Those tiles are worth double points, so instead of 2 points, that tile would be worth 4 points. So you add up the total for your city, move your scoring marker along the appropriate amount, and then you get to take the meeple back to your supply, and you can use him on a subsequent turn to be placed somewhere else to earn more points during the game. So that's the knight. So if you place your meeple onto a road, he becomes a thief. And in a similar way to the cities, the thief owns that road, and the longer the road gets during the game, the more points it will be worth. Once a road has a starting point and a finishing point, it's at that point that the road is scored. Roads will score 1 point per tile. So you'll score those and once again get to take your meeple back to use later. So that's the thief. If you happen to turn over a cloister and place it out onto the map, you can then place your meeple onto the cloister and he becomes a monk. Now, in order to score points for the cloister, you would need to completely surround that tile with other tiles. So it would need 8 tiles all the way around. The points that you score is 1 point per tile, including the cloister tile. So for a total of 9 points once you've completely surrounded that cloister. So that's what the monk does. Now the final spot that you can place a meeple is into the field, and they become a farmer. Now, once you've placed a meeple into a field, he's going to stay there for the entire game. You'll never get him back. So you've got to be a little bit careful how you place those. But they can earn you quite a number of points, because what they're going to do is at the end of the game, they will score you 3 points for every completed city that the field they are in reaches. Now you can imagine if you place the tiles correctly, you could end up with quite a number of cities that that field connects to during the game. Now the fields are bordered by the roads that exist during the game, but you could end up with quite a number of points from your farmers at game end. So that's the 4 different ways that you can place those meeples. Let's have a look at how the game ends. So once the last tile is drawn and placed, that ends the game. Now what you'll find is that there will no doubt be some things that are unfinished out on the map. So there'll be unfinished cities, perhaps unfinished roads. Fortunately, each one of those things is then scored as it stands. The only major difference is that the cities will only score half points at that point. So ideally you want to try and finish as many of your cities as you can before the end of the game. So you'll add up those final scores. You'll also add up the scores for the farmers that you may have out on the board. Tally up your score. Whoever has the highest score is the winner. Now I mentioned at the start that you also get a little expansion with the game called the River. Now if you want to use the river tiles, it basically replaces the start tile. So instead of using the normal start tile, you will use the river tiles instead. What you need to do is find, there are 2 tiles that depict the start of the river from a mountain and also a lake. So you'll set the lake aside, that'll be the last tile that comes out. You'll put that into play as the first tile, shuffle the remaining river tiles, and you'll use those first. So just play as normal, take 1 tile at a time and add it to the river. Some of those tiles have roads and cities, etc., so you can start placing your meeples out as you lay those river tiles. But you'll eventually complete the river by placing that final lake tile on, and then you just move on to the normal tiles and gameplay continues as in a normal game of Carcassonne. So it just adds a little bit of variety to the start of the game.
In summary, players take turns drawing tiles and adding them to the map of Carcassonne. Players may deploy followers onto the tile they have just drawn as knights, thieves, monks, or farmers. Once a feature of the map is completed, it is scored and the followers are returned to the player. Once the last tile is placed, all incomplete features are scored, as well as all farmers. The player with the highest score is the winner.
So as you can see, Carcassonne is a pretty easy game to learn. It's great for families because even quite young kids are able to learn it relatively easily. So if you haven't got a copy of Carcassonne, make sure you get one soon. Thanks for watching. Happy gaming.